Greetings from the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. No, we're so excited to be here today to do a one-on-one conversation with Vanita Gupta, Associate Attorney General of the United States Department of Justice. But first, let me bring a greetings on behalf of our National President, Linda R. Williams, on behalf of our incoming President, Frederick Thomas, our Executive Board, members and constituents. But I'm very excited, and full disclosure, we're talking a family here, Noble family. We consider Vanita part of our family. And so I want to make sure you know that we're going to ask questions and hear from her. But just a quick introduction. As many of you all know, may not know, she is the first woman of color to be the #3 at DOJ. And though we should have to say that to you all, I want to make sure we do acknowledge that. We at Noble definitely endorsed her nomination. Many of us that are in the listening audience also supported her. But yes, we're excited that she is now the Associate Attorney General of the Department of Justice. Now, as many of you may not know, but you should know, she's the president and CEO, was the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil Human Rights. That's an organization that Noble has been very close to for our 45 years of existence. And before that, she was head of the Civil Rights Division during the Obama administration of DOJ from 2014 to 2017. But also, Noble family, many of you may remember this, but at our 40th anniversary conference in Washington, D.C., she also received the Noble Civil Rights Award. So she is very familiar with us, but we definitely want to now give her an opportunity to give us remarks, opening statement, then we'll be led by a few questions from me.
Thank you, Dwayne. I am so honored to be here and honored to be here with you, Dwayne. Thank you for your kind introduction and for your friendship all of these years. I want to thank Noble for this invitation to President Linda Williams and the board of directors. It's just really great to be here. And I only wish we could meet in person, but just before this webinar started, I committed to Dwayne that I would be at your Orlando conference next summer, hopefully in person, where we can all be together in community. As you all know, today is National Night Out. And for those of you that are going to be participating, I hope to hear more about all the events around the country. I'm going to be leaving shortly to go to Baltimore to visit with my friend, Commissioner Harrison, who's been a tremendous partner and law enforcement leader all these years in Baltimore. So I know you heard earlier from the Attorney General and the FBI Director, and on behalf of the department's leadership, I want to re-extend my warmest wishes to Noble and to this community. Noble has been such a valuable partner. It's in many ways also been a moral conscience and force to the department and to the entire country. You've had a steadfast commitment and demonstration of the understanding of just how foundational it is to build community trust in order to have public safety. And these are elements that go to the heart of constitutional policing. I think in so many ways, there have been so many challenges on all of you and on the profession, both because of the pandemic, of course, and then, of course, George Floyd's death last summer in Minneapolis, triggering, again, a nationwide conversation about race and justice and public safety that I know, impacted all of our communities around the country. And in the face of all of this and all of these challenges, Noble has doubled down on its mission to ensure equity in the administration of justice. And we look to you as leaders and will continue to do so. Your Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, I think, was really striking in the way that it explores the role and presence and responsibilities of police in America. I was struck by the fact that the task force issued this report, which really echoed a vision of policing that is built on the bedrock principle that building trust and safety in communities must be local and community led. And I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but we in the federal government recognize just how fundamentally local policing is, and the role of the federal government to support and promote law enforcement and best practices and civil rights is our purview, but we know that law enforcement is so inherently local. We also know that when distrust, fosters, it can hamper the work of law enforcement in its ability to have victims and witnesses report crimes, work with police, and that when people trust law enforcement and recognize its legitimate authority to enforce the law, that's when we can do the most effective violence prevention and public safety work and protect people's civil rights. So we're committed to working alongside all of you at Noble. Just quickly, and then I want to go into the minutes remaining for questions. Most people don't know what the Associate Attorney General office does. So outside of overseeing the Justice Department's civil litigating components, what matters, I think, most of all to your members is the work that we do on state local law enforcement. The Associate Attorney General's portfolio includes oversight of the Office of Justice Programs, the COPS Office, the Office of Violence Against Women. So all of the grant making that the Justice Department does, as well as the Civil Rights Division, which, as you all know, has a unique authority to investigate patterns and practices of systemic misconduct in police departments around the country. Just so you know, through our grant making, we support over $7 billion of funding and assistance for state, local, and tribal partners. About $3 billion of that from the Office of Justice Programs to support a whole array of criminal justice and law enforcement efforts, 21st century policing practices, programs aimed at community-based substance use and mental health treatment and the like. For this upcoming budget, we've requested $651 million for the COPS office, which would be a historic rise in that number. And it also includes $20 million to relaunch the collaborative reform program to help local jurisdictions with technical assistance, along with working on CRITEC, which is another TA mechanism that we have here at the Justice Department to support law enforcement agencies. We know there's a lot of issues confronting all of you today, and a lot of desire to have more data, trainings, TA, research. And we ask you to continue to work with us to teach us about what we don't know and what you all need in the field. And on mental health, I hopefully, Dwayne, you and I will be able to talk a little bit about some good mental health work that we're trying to do, both to support officers in the field, but also to deal with co-response models to help scale them and fund them, and to look at the ways in which we can have better supports for law enforcement by having greater community-based efforts as well on these issues. So I'm looking forward to your questions. There's tons more to say, but let me take your questions now, and thank you again.
Absolutely. So Ms. Gupta, we're going to have a time for about maybe 3 questions. But the first question is, if you're to look in a crystal ball, what is the one thing you see changing to improve policing practices?
One of the things I think that I've been hearing from chiefs, law enforcement executives, community leaders right now is the amount of social problems that we place at the feet of law enforcement. And while not prioritizing community-based efforts. And this is, I think, really clear in areas of mental health and substance use disorder. There's concepts like alternative approaches to responding to calls for service that are transforming policing as well. We have a Protect and Connect initiative, which is an example of how we're changing how we support law enforcement and advance new policing practices to support the field. This program, it provides grant funding to pair law enforcement and behavioral health professionals to respond to calls for service. And a recent analysis of 911 call data in 8 cities found that between 23 to 39% of calls for help were low priority or non-urgent calls, such as noise complaints or loitering or non-urgent medical needs. And the ability to triage and pull in other systems could help alleviate the burdens on law enforcement. And so we are looking to protect and connect law enforcement agencies with other community-based providers where it's safe to do so. And we have a range of other programs, Dwayne, along these lines. We also are working to support accreditation, de-escalation training, crisis intervention training, and supporting recruitment efforts, because we are very attuned to the fact that that's been a strain over the last 18 months. So I know I cherry picked a few, but those are but those are some areas that I think are really important to addressing some of the needs in communities right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I know this is one that's been discussed a lot, even during our conference. What role should the federal government play in improving policing outcomes for communities of color in the U.S.?
So, as I said, I think the Justice Department recognizes that policing is inherently local. And in a country of 17,000 police departments, the role of the federal government can be, that we have convening power to bring stakeholders together to collaborate through effective community engagement strategies, share best practices, and the like. As I said, we support through our grant making of close to $7 billion. We support state and local law enforcement with the kinds of tools, training, technical assistance. The president requested $20 million in his FY22 budget to address training on racial profiling, de-escalation, the duty to intervene program. There's funds in the House for implicit bias and use of force training. And we've got a whole range of efforts right now so that the Justice Department can promote through the COPS office and Office of Justice programs, things like recruitment and hiring efforts. We've got the promotion of best practices, as I said. We've got a law enforcement in your community training that's a partnership with Noble, actually. And we are always, and then we are putting together, and I'm really excited to announce this and hope that maybe next summer we can say more, but in the coming months, we're going to be launching a national law enforcement knowledge lab that's going to develop and consolidate resources from all across the department, but also from Noble and PERF and IACP that aggregate all of the kind of best practices on policing today, so that people don't have to go to one website or another, but that the Justice Department is a clearinghouse for all of you. We'll pull from our consent decrees. We'll pull from all of the range of research that's out there. Another one that I want to mention, and this is an example of how the Justice Department and the role of the federal government is that the Bureau of Justice Assistance is developing an Elevate Blue suite of training courses on essential core areas of law enforcement operations. And we're partnering with IACP on this. We have our Valor program our Valor Officer Safety and Wellness program that's dedicated to preventing injuries and deaths of law enforcement officers. So we view, just in sum, our role as being able to both provide support, provide funding, convening power. We obviously have the enforcement arm of the Civil Rights Division, which is an important piece of the spectrum. But between kind of the funding and the pattern and practice investigation is a whole range of funding, support, data, research, technical assistance. And we have a public safety mission, just like you do, Dwayne, and all your members do. And our goal is to be able to work together to create safe communities where civil rights are respected. And we have to do that in partnership with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we're down to a few more minutes, but next question. What adjustments to policing policies and practices do you think are needed to address social problems that impact public safety? And I know this has been a lot of conversations around everything from defund the police, et cetera, but what are your thoughts on what are the needed adjustments?
I think a lot of the conversation after George Floyd has been around why that policing alone cannot be the only go-to solution for public safety. And I know Noble has been thinking about this a lot too, and this is part of your reimagining public safety. But what is the role of community-based mental health treatment? What is the role of community-based substance use disorders and of 911 triaging that will kind of alleviate the burdens that we place on law enforcement to be the only go-to solution in communities? What is the role of the Justice Department to support those innovations? And so we want to think about that. I think that is where, as I said, chiefs and civil rights advocates are coming together on kind of wanting to advocate for these types of kind of co-response models. I also think that we have an important role on promoting and continuing to promote de-escalation, communication critical thinking, problem solving, crisis intervention, and de-escalation skills among members. We did a field experiment that found that officers who completed de-escalation training were involved in 28% fewer uses of force, 26% fewer citizen complaints, 36% fewer officer injuries than those who received no training. And we want to build out national training models that build on these best practices that are data driven, so that we can scale them up and your members can have the benefit of having these types of programs in their jurisdiction. And obviously combating implicit racial bias and the like, and having trauma-informed policing and prosecution is an area that we're focusing on as well. But we are always learning and needing to hear from you and Noble members in the field. You are at the front lines of some of these really important and difficult conversations. And we look to you to help inform us about where else we need to go. But those are some of the things that I think are kind of cutting edge in the thinking that I know we're doing as a kind of public safety community right now.
Okay. And Ms. Gupta, as we close, is there any other maybe lasting comments you want to make, or any maybe call to action to Noble as we close out here in the next minute? Any thoughts you want to share as we close?
Yeah, I would just say that I have always thought of, and I continue to think of Noble as really kind of a moral voice in the profession. And And many of you are holding kind of double, triple burdens of understanding kind of race and racial injustice and being at the front lines of public safety, trying to push the guardian model in your communities because you know just how much both violence impacts communities of color, but also the degree to which mass incarceration and policies that are deemed to be unfair can impact the ability of law enforcement to have the trust and legitimacy in their communities. And I would say continue to do the kind of thinking you're doing, to share it outward, to be the leaders that you are, to inform us of where we need to be. I just want to thank all of you for the work that you do. It's tireless. Sometimes it's thankless. And we just at the Justice Department have great appreciation for Noble and its members. And we look forward to a continued and robust partnership in the months and years to come.
Well, that's good. We wish you all the best and Godspeed in your new endeavor as Associate Attorney General of the United States of the Department of Justice. And we thank you so much for your time today. And please thank your team for making this possible. This concludes our discussion. Vanita will be in contact. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.